The videos will be able to be purchased from Ray Borders, and his telephone number is 702-791-3445. Dave Orlove's telephone number, 702-379-1782. We feel that the message that you'll be hearing tonight is so important that you will want to get these tapes and to pass them all over the United States. Okay, once again, the telephone number for the Patriot Video, which is Dave Orlove's, the telephone number is 702-379-1782. And for Ray Borders, Eagle International Films, 702-791-3445. And I'll repeat this later on during the taping. Cathern, thank you once again very much for coming, really. And everyone, let's give her a big hand. One of the real important questions that people seem to want to ask you is, how did you get involved with the Branch Davidians? How was a little girl, your childhood and progression? I found that so interesting today when you were on the radio.
Well, I had a father that was not a religious man in the sense that he went to a church.
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Good. Well, my father was not a religious man and he did not go to church. My mother was a Catholic and was very staunch Catholic. But when I went to the Catholic Church, I noticed that they would say, well, Christ died for your sins, but if you're not good, you will not go to heaven. And I could not understand that. So I started to, I was in my early teens, I started to listen to the radio, and there were men on the radio, like the radio class of the air, different ones that really use the Bible extensively. And that's who I started to listen to. As I progressed and became older, I stopped going to any church and I wasn't too interested. But eventually, when I started to be married and I was beginning to have children, I realized that I had to give them more than just the world. And so I started to go to the Baptist church because I felt that they had a more understanding of the scriptures than anyone else. I found, though, that they did carry the Bible, and they did know quite a bit of it, but it was not as fulfilling as I expected. I then had met some people who were Seventh-day Adventists, and they showed me something that I had never seen in the scriptures before. So I started to go to their organization, and I learned all that I could from them. And then I finally realized that when I looked at my Bible in the Baptists, there was only certain areas of the Bible I was using. With the Adventists, there was only certain areas I was using. And I met Ben Roden. He came to Phoenix, and by that time, that's where I was living. I originally lived in Providence, Rhode Island. He came to Phoenix, and I found some of the things he was teaching and showing us was very important. So I started to listen to him more than to anyone else. I finally went down to Mount Carmel Center because that's where they were staying. And I liked it because it was out in the country, and they were groups of people families that lived in the houses there. There was about 15 houses, and they were very friendly people. And so I started to keep going back. Finally, they wanted me to stay, so I decided to go to Mount Carmel Center and stay. My husband was in a court, so it wasn't too much of a problem. When Ben Roden had died, the year before, Lois Roden had started her message. And when I was staying there, I was working with them on to keep the place going, and I became very close to them. Then we took Brother Roden over to Israel, and he was buried in the Mount of Olives. Now, the only people that are buried over there are those that are prophets, which impressed me because I talked with one of the natives, one of the Jewish men there, and he was saying he didn't understand why people in other countries could come and be buried there, and people in their country could not be buried there. I realized that Ben Roden had been in Israel 2 or 3 times and had talked with the rabbis, so they knew that he was teaching things that other people were not teaching. Lois Roden started to teach her message, which was the female part of the Godhead. And we traveled all over the country. We went up all through Canada, and her message that she printed was going all over the world. Finally, after about 3 or 4 years, Reverend Howell came, and he wanted to talk with us, so she said fine, and we went in, and he talked to us for 5 hours. I could see that he had a lot of things that he was bringing up that I had never heard before, and it was purely biblical. But I had very little biblical experience, and so a lot of it, I didn't know the minor prophets, and I didn't know too much about Isaiah. I didn't know too much about anything I found out.
Catherine, I know that the people are very, very interested in Mr. Koresh also.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, that's the other name,
Yes.
isn't it? Okay.
He came in 1981.
Okay.
After he had started to give this message, Lois stepped down and let him take charge. He finally, he'd say to us, now, this is not my message. And we say, how come he can say that when he's showing us so many things that we never saw before? Finally, in 1985, he came back from Israel, and this was the message he was going to give us. And that's when he really started to expound more on the depth of the Bible than he had before. People at Mount Carmel, the ones that were there, many of them had positions that were very important. Wayne Mon was a lawyer. He had graduated from Harvard. Jeff Lill was a young man, but he was very excellent in the type of work that he did. And these people were wanted by very important companies. Many of the younger ones also had very good jobs. We had 2 houses there, and so they were filled with the young people that had come in and wanted to hear what Vernon had to say. He did change his name to David Koresh, and he did that because of it tells you in Isaiah 44 and 45. This is a surname, and actually in the olden days when Cyrus the king was in charge, Cyrus means Koresh. But this was his first name. This was not his surname. Anyway, he explained to us more about his name and what the meaning of it was. He started to go into the seals, and in Revelation. This was the book that was the foundation for our beliefs. And the prophecies